You ain't never seen my movies?
Actors that played Superman have leapt out windows to their death and been paralyzed and wheelchair bound, yet the character lives on to this day. As with the character 007, Batman and other superhero movies use new actors to carry on the legendary characters for a new generation. In the modern era of CGI, it's not a crazy idea to do as the Fast and the Furious 7 and use digital actors, but not in this case. And I wondered why, when it made so much money. The judge had a few answers.
Black Panther. Disney and ABC badly needed some money. Why? They jacked up some white folk in this thing, So You Want to Be a Millionaire. So the people that felt aggrieved sued them for about $7-8 million. Well, they won, and ABC and Disney kept appealing, and finally they got through the federal system. Went up to the 9-member Court of Appeals for the Ninth Circuit. It's an interesting opinion. It starts off, it seems that this industry does not recognize Rule 1 in American contract law, and that is all parties are expected to deal with each other well, taking the language, just straight up and be honest, in good faith, okay? So they said, we'll fix that. So they raised the judgment from the requested $7 or $8 million to $580 million. Sheesh. That was in 2011. And the United States Supreme Court refused to hear it, so it was affirmed. So there's no appeal. So the plaintiffs hold liens against all ABC property in the country and all Disney property. And most of the rides at Disney World down in Florida, and a lot of them at Disneyland, had everything that came out of it other than operational expenses going through to the plaintiffs. So they couldn't pay the interest, and the judgment had risen over $1 billion some. So Hollywood has very little cash. They do a lot of reciprocity and exchanges and all of this other stuff. So they came up with the Black Panther movie. My sources tell me they were discussing it in the hallways about predictably how they could get black folk to pay a lot of money. Now, what did they do? They got a formula. I used to hear them discuss it when my show was with Paramount. Now, the formula is interesting, but let's take that movie. The worst thing in the movie was that last battle between the men and the women of the tribe trying to kill each other.
Adding to confusion, division, and disorder, War of the Sexes will escalate, especially in the black community, when Marvel makes Shuri the new Black Panther, by design. In the Black Panther Marvel comics, Shuri became the new Black Panther. The increase in young people turning to witchcraft as a viable spiritual science will also continue to grow, I will predict. Unfortunately, but it's part of the great work.
The women committed treason by propping up the old Panther that Killmonger had defeated. Killmonger didn't have any super drug in him to give him super strength. He beat the Panther's ass, fair and square, threw him off in the water. The guy survived. Well, the babes committed treason against the rules of the culture, and they go to help him. Now, who did they go to enlist in their effort to overthrow the now rightful King Killmonger? They go and get some black folk who live where it snows all the time in caves, cavemen, and this is supposed to be in Africa. Where? Mount Kilimanjaro on the other side of the continent from, you see, and then they don't have any black men that can fly that virtual fighter plane. They got to get a white CIA guy to do it. And you don't see any black men doing a damn thing except in the background as spectators are pushing the cart. They got that guy with the big lip disc in who's some kind of preacher stand-in. Yeah, they got that, but the mama runs things, the aunt runs things. His bodyguards are actually his keepers who tell him and nag him about what to do and not to do. And he runs around in some tights playing vigilante. Now, Killmonger, meanwhile, his daddy was the brother of the past king. And what was he doing? They listed him as being in some projects, public housing on the West Coast, and he's trying to teach these boys how to be men. So he gets killed because he wants to take the technology that Uganda has, Wakanda has, whatever the hell the name is, and use it to subdue Africa and take over the whole world and impose peace. So he goes through MIT, he graduates at 19, he's a rocket scientist, he becomes a SEAL, he's so badass they give him a nickname Killmonger. He plans, plots, and gets his head together for revolution. He's supposed to be the bad guy, and they have him talking what Frederick Douglass said, Marcus Garvey said, Du Bois said, Malcolm X said, a little of what Martin said, and what H. Rap Brown said, and they make him the villain. And they got all these little black kids and black women, hey, they're cheering for him to be put down. You know, so they make him the villain. And in the comic book, Killmonger is a person that engages in illicit drug sales and sex trafficking, where the Black Panther, who sounds like Killmonger in the comics, goes from Africa to Harlem to go deal with him because of his international influence negatively on black folk. They split the script all the way around.
This is the same hermetic alchemical idea as above, so below. Turning villains to heroes rather than base metals to gold. The tactic that he's explaining can be referred to in the occult as an hermetic inversion. Hermes was the Greek name for Tehuti, or Thoth. This entity or spirit of magic gave the blueprint of modern-day witchcraft to mankind. Books like Stolen Legacy by George G.M. for Grandmaster James, or George M. James, prove that ancient Greek culture was taught to them by the Egyptians, or Cometians, who came before them. Both cultures were exactly as the fallen, disguised as gods and ancestors, first taught those first civilizations to build those first cultures on earth to be. So they were as they were meant to be. It's not something you can change or that was twisted around or rearranged. The elite keep trying to feed black intellectuals the narrative that since their ancestors taught the kings of other lands this magic, somehow this modern generation can take it back. It's been decades of that rhetoric and none have done it yet. The truth is, two things are true here. A, Hermeticism comes from ancient Egypt or Kemet, and two, it was taught to them by the fallen. It's one thing to tell young people where something comes from, and another thing altogether to tell them that it's good. Ancient Africans taught the world both righteous things and wicked things, just like their ancestors today. Don't fall for the hermetic inversion, turning something light to dark or making evil fair seeming.
And then the final thing is, you know, when you have one of those Marvel movies, if you wait through the credits, you'll get more to the movie. And then finally, the Black Panther is telling all these white people in the UN that they're going to help them. And the guy says, excuse me, with due respect, sir, why in the world would we be interested in what some backwoods agricultural place has to offer us? See, so, I mean, it's like that was predictable. And I'm so angry about one bad circumstance, and not so much that it was the highest grossing superhero movie of all time, but out of every city in America, the highest gross for box office came out of Memphis, Tennessee.
Revelation 2-9ers and Freemasons run Hollyweird. Some things they don't want us to know about our history. Other things they push on us, even through what trends online. They know that the Black Panther pose, the Wakanda pose, the Wakanda Forever pose is actually the Freemasonic rebirth pose, which comes from Africa like a lot of things, but it is not good. What are they trying to make you reborn as?
Wow. The largest predominantly black city in America. Yeah. And they had folk buying up 25, 30, 50 tickets at a time for parties they organized 2 and 3 weeks in advance. And you can't even get them out to organize saving their own neighborhoods like that. Right. So I'm just saying, damn, they ripped us off. And then I got the word back, they were rejoicing. Yeah, we got the African-American bunch once again bailed us out. See, that's how these folk got established more than 50 years ago. The movie industry was going bankrupt in the face of color TV. And every Thursday and Sunday, every movie theater in America had 2 new movies, plus cartoons and a sub-feature. And that made the studios come up with several hundred movies or productions a year. And they couldn't afford it in the face of color TV. So they got a bright idea, and they had all these newbies who were part of this cabal that came in. And they said, look, let us pose something for you. One, instead of having 2 new movies every Thursday and Sunday, let's keep the movies as long as people will come, and let's tap all of this cash out there in underrepresented communities. We want to deal with the black community. We call ourselves black then. So what did they do? Said, we're not going to give them all of these things we give white people because they can't see themselves being leaders and businessmen, all of this, that, and the other. We need to appeal to the lowest common denominator. So let them be caught up in our glorification of pimps, hoes, drug dealers, gangsters, robbers, murderers, burglars, and every kind of punk-ass whatever we can think of and get all of their money. And then they had, Black Caesar, had a football player, Fred the Hammer Williams. And he played this drug dealer who was also a hitman, and he rides off into the sunrise smoking a big cigar after they had this shootout in Long Beach, and no LAPD, no sirens or nothing, and the place is full of dead folk after this shootout, all right? And then 18 months later, they have, Superfly, Rod O'Neal, with a wig on top and his hair pressed, driving a pimp mobile, selling coke. Yeah, man, we got to get into this coke, man. That's some deep shit, man. And Freddie's dead, but Superfly is what it is. And Rod O'Neal's characters, they do 5 more movies in the franchise, and everybody switched from wearing dashikis and afros and beards, and now broad collar platforms, fried their hair again, driving pimp mobiles, talking about, yeah, man, about that cane, man. And the FBI started flooding the neighborhoods with coke. And then you got the jackass in chief sitting in the White House. He in 1977 and 79 and 81 with John B. Stennis and Eastland, James O. Eastland. And Bird. all these racist Klansmen, they started putting stuff in place, and Biden was going around saying, one rock will get you 5 years in a federal penitentiary, and that means the whole 60 months, not just a few months. One rock.
If you have a piece of crack cocaine, no bigger than this quarter that I'm holding in my hand, 1/4 of $1. We passed a law through the leadership of Senator Thurmond and myself and others, a law that says you're caught with that, you go to jail for 5 years. You get no probation, you get nothing other than 5 years in jail. Judge doesn't have a choice. Under our forfeiture statutes, the government can, take everything you own, everything from your car to your house, your bank account, not merely what they confiscate in terms of the dollars from the transaction that you've just got caught engaging in. They can take everything. I don't care why they've become a sociopath. We have an obligation to cordon them off from the rest of society. They are in jail, away from my mother, your husband, our families. So I don't want to ask what made them do this. They must be taken off the street.
You know, and you got that crap going in because that came off of Freebase. Then you got that crackhead Hunter Biden's son of his. So,
right.
You see that dude's teeth, man? Damn, he must have been doing crystal meth too on top of the crack. That dude's teeth rotten as hell. Looked like he came out the Middle Ages someplace, somewhere down on a country-ass farm, down in a swamp somewhere, down in Louisiana.
I kind of got a two-part question to add on to the whole Black Panther thing. One will be part 2 of the movie. It seems like it's like a woman thing going on with that, especially the cover. And then the death of Chadwick Boseman. They say he died from cancer. Obviously, it looked like it. Do you think that?
Yeah.
Could you speak on that?
Well, let me put it this way. Did you see the movie Jackie Robinson, 42?
Mm-hmm.
See the one on Thurgood Marshall?
Mm-hmm.
See the one on Joe Louis?
Mm-hmm.
Did you see Gods of Egypt?
Didn't see that one.
No.
See it.
Okay.
Somebody plays the flamer in that, who is the god of wisdom. I mean, just flaming. You can feel the heat all the way back in the 37th row of the theater. That's part of this thing where they identified the parts, not with the character, but the actor. So they're trying to push fluid gender.
When you look at Hollywood, and it's Hollyweird, there's a reason for it, and I hear all these stories, and you look at some people that make it and you go, how the fuck are they getting all this shit? Like, literally. And a lot of them are not that great. You're like, how are they getting everything? Sometimes, you know? And you see a lot of talented people, and they're not really, you know, you have that ceiling. You're almost there, but you can't seem to get over that hump. And then if you keep your integrity, it just takes a little longer, which is fine. I'm that dude. I don't have it in my makeup, in my DNA, to have somebody put their finger in my ass. That's just not. They go, dude, listen. All I have to do, let me put my finger in, just let me go like that. Just like that. I'm gonna go just like that. And guess what? You're gonna be the new Iron Man.
So this same person plays a badass boxer, a hell of a lawyer and civil rights activist who used to be known as Mr. Baseball because he always carried a baseball bat. He was notorious for warming somebody's head. That's Thurgood Marshall, and he always had a requirement when he went someplace, have me a 12 gauge and a carton of buckshot. So if it comes to that, we can deal with it. and Mr. Baseball, number 42, 44, 42, yeah. And you see, you can be flamer, you can be boxer, you can be baseball player, you can be brilliant scholar. That's what they did, or you can be superhero. So that's what they were doing. And this movie, the next one coming up, it's like Woman King.
Yeah.
Oh, that's really poisonous. You know what the story is behind that? First off, there was no woman king. They had a queen, but there was an active king. There were 3 brothers, blood kin in Dahomey. And they were tribal nobility. Well, the tribe in question was paying tribute to the Yoruba up north of them in Nigeria. So they hooked up a deal with the white folk, the Dutch and the English, to supply large number of slaves for them. What they did is interesting. They had every guy who was an official or a war chief countered by a woman counterpart who was close to him by kinship or something. And the king kept the women in the court with him so he could control them. And he gave each woman veto power over what their male relative or kin did as an administrator or as a war chief, so he could keep things under control. He would not allow any of the African aristocrats to participate, so there would be no rival. And he did set up a small unit of Amazons to go around and try to do a little police work or report back to him. So that continued for quite a few decades when the slave trade was going on. When the Europeans said no more slave trade, and the Americans in the Constitution said no more slave importation after, I think it's either 1807 or 1806, somewhere there, 1808. They decided to suppress it, and they quickly fell. So there was no woman king anyway. But what they did is the feminists glorified this to get people used to the idea. And they are glorifying some people who were enslaving a lot of their fellow Africans. Not saying it wasn't done, but they ramped the process up. An analogy would be, let's supposing Jewish women decided that, okay, women aren't being honored enough for being aggressive. Let's pick a German woman in World War II, even if she happened to be a Nazi and she was rounding up Jewish people and sending them to the concentration camps. Let's honor her. Well, that's the equivalent of what they did with that movie. They picked a woman who was in a position, and her Confederates who were in a position, because they were promoting slavery. Now that's the reality.
Admittedly, I wasn't the biggest comic book collector. I had a nice, amount of them, but I don't remember having a Black Panther comic book, and I don't remember a lot of my friends having it either. So it was interesting to me to see this craze, this fervor, this fever, this anticipation, this pride, all concerning this movie. And it wasn't a Black-owned and operated production. It had a lot of Black so-called stars. And it had a lot of so-called cultural affirmations. Many folks thought that they were going to see something that was both culture affirming, Black male affirming, And unfortunately, folks who are so desperate for leadership and for things to be excited about and for images of themselves that are not always depictions of the lowest members of society, folks are starving for that so bad they'll just about take anything. And that's why we easy. We easy like a Sunday morning. And that's why Stan Martin Lieber. That's why Stanley Martin Lieber was able to you know, it's his vision, but we know Disney owns everything now. But Stan Lee is one of the creators of this character. And so we're going to look at some things and the history of Jewish Americans, so-called Jewish Americans, their constant connection to the Black American experience. Beyond Hollywood, you know, there was a period of time in Detroit where a lot of Black homeowners got their first homes because, you know, only the quote-unquote Jews would rent to them. And then you have this Jewish connection to the civil rights movement. You also have a strong Jewish connection, unbeknownst to many people, to the so-called consciousness movement. Okay? But we're going to look at some things. And just one thing before we look at the clip, because we have to see this clip so that everybody's up to speed on a couple of things that I'm going to dig into concerning the movie. But this clip is basically, it's called 10 Secrets Marvel is Hiding About Black Panther. And it's not from, you know, any conspiratorial researcher. It just seems to be a kid, like a lot of young guys, excited about Marvel movies in general. And, you know, this one is no exception. And that seemed to be the sentiment at large. It wasn't just black folks who were very excited. It was comic book fans in general who like to see the depictions of their childhood heroes on the big screen, complete with special effects. And this one was no slouch. They didn't slack. And I think that a lot of folks were just so happy that they could see themselves depicted on the big screen with a black Superman that folks missed the forest for the trees. So now we finna look at the trees. Now, first things first, the Black Panther has a name, like Superman has a name. Superman has a name. He has a human name, the name that he's known to among the uninitiated, and then he has a name that he goes by, or that the people who don't know his secret call him. His name is Clark Kent. Spider-Man is Peter Parker. The Black Panther's name is T'Challa, which I thought was interesting. Now, I know that T'Challa, his name is spelled with an apostrophe, or rather an accent between the T and the C, like a lot of ethnic names are. But I noticed that as I looked at the name after I typed it out, I noticed Allah backward in the name. And, you know, when we play the spelling spell game, we note anything that's 3, 4, 5 letters in a row is beyond incidental. It's coincidental, meaning that it goes along with another incident. And the incident is that there is an agenda to push black people in a particular direction, especially in the information age, where there is a great focus on finding out the truth, finding out certain secrets, finding out hidden information. Now you can do more research on your ancestry through the blessing of a service like Ancestry.com, and Oprah and other black elite representatives are pushing for us to find out who we are and where we came from and blah, blah, blah. And everything is always pushing us back to an African witchcraft-laced identity. This is what we're always pushed into. And Black Panther was no exception to that rule. First of all, when they fantasize or when they reimagine Africa, you know, the truth is what make you sad, what make you mad, and what make you glad. But they don't tell the truth about Africa in this film in a similar way that they didn't tell the truth about coming to America in that film for the same reason. Because they want to, the idea is to make Africa an ideal homeland for you, because you have been conditioned to want to be a boss so bad by a system that's created by bosses for bosses, or rather by the elite for the elite, by brotherhood members for brotherhood members. So you want to be a king or a queen. I remember the pro-black era when the phrase was really popular in my generation. I know it was also popular in my mother's generation when they was running around here wearing afros, running around Detroit, you know, throwing up the Black Power fist. And in my generation, it came back with X-Clan and Public Enemy and KRS-One and Kool Moe Dee and Lakim Shabazz and Def Jeff and Paris and all of the conscious rappers. They brought the phrase that we were kings and queens to my attention. And that sounded pretty good to me. When I was a child, I thought like a child. I spoke like a child. When I became a man, I put away childish things. And now I realize the childish idea of a nation where everyone is kings and queens. To believe that, first of all, they must have thought that you weren't just born at night, but you was born last night. And we had a hard time thinking things through because of being blinded by pride and this deep yearning and need to connect back to a ancient history, a secret reality. We do have a secret identity, like the black folk, the black Americans in the Panther movie. There were black Americans who had a secret identity. All of them didn't have this secret identity, but some of them were actually related to this secret tribe, if you will. The secret, unknown, underground, hidden, or lost tribe, if you will.
That was my biggest issue when I left the theater. I was like, wait a minute. It was just a black on black violence film. I mean, the whole time. And I'm like, I'm not even going in thinking about the racial aspects of it. I was really trying to approach this like a film. I was trying to be entertained because I knew it was going to be propaganda. So I was just trying to get something out of it that's entertaining. I wanted to be able to say at least it was a good movie. And it was okay. There's things I liked about it, but there's a lot of things I didn't like about it. And one of those things was the fact that it was like internal. It was internal strife. It was infighting the entire time. He was fighting against his own army. He was fighting against his own people. I mean, the Killmonger was actually,
family.
Yeah, he was family, bloodline. Right?
This is the deal. Everybody was so excited about something that takes place in an alternate universe. The Marvel universe is not reality, but it is a place. It is a place where there's a timeline. There's a history. There are certain politics in place. It is also an inversion of reality, the Marvel universe, quote unquote. It's where all of these characters are, you know, when you watch the Marvel films, you may see how they're going to introduce Captain America, you know, when you're watching the Hulk film or something like that. You know, they will show you how this universe intertwines all of these characters together. But this universe is an inversion of reality. So the fact, once again, it was black folks getting excited about a fantasy, an inversion of reality, really and truly, what it could be in a perfect world. Now, how practical is that when living in the real world and functioning in society as it stands has been the issue? Learning how to do that is the issue. Some alternate universe where, black folks have this great hidden underground nation, blah, blah, blah. All that's cool, but again, it takes you out of dealing with the realities of the issues in this nation. How can we ever have a real conversation about something when we're basing it on fantasy?
Yes.
This universe is such a fantastical construct that in the Marvel universe, the Illuminati are good guys. Yes, indeed. And the inversions that they showed throughout the movie were just as important. For one thing, we have a black male character. Now, for a man to identify with an animal isn't a sign of wisdom or maturity. However, in general, there's this idea that men identify with dogs and women identify with cats. Again, it's a pop culture idea. We could even find it in George Clinton, Atomic Dog. Why must I be like that? Why must I chase the cat?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And this idea of a cat as being something feminine, the sex kitten program.
Yeah.
Okay. So you have this feminization, this subtle feminization. Okay. Again, in essence, he's a black cat. Then, the other occult undertones that still carry this inversion of, what looks to be a good guy, but there's this inverted perception of what a good guy is. Do you know that in the comic books, Lupita character, his sister, in the comic books, she's not a technological whiz. She's not especially intelligent. She doesn't use science. She uses witchcraft. She's a witch in the comic books.
Mm-hmm.
And she takes over the Black Panther costume and title from her brother in the comic books. Black Panther becomes a female.
Interesting.
So at the end of the day, this supposed celebration of black malehood, which all superhero movies are supposed to be this celebration of manliness. Little boys, grow up to idolize their favorite superheroes.
Mm-hmm.
The hero itself comes from Heru, and at the end of the day, all of the superhero stories are ways to turn the legends of the fallen ones into tales, into little bite-sized tales for the children to consume, primarily the young men of the culture who collected comic books. So rather than have the proper role models for masculinity and manhood, you're given these role models that are controlled again from this. They emanate from out of this fantasy universe, this Marvel universe, and they also emanate from out of a entertainment industry that's hell bent on this hermetic inversion, on this turning things around backwards, making male female and making evil fair seeming. And the movie did that in classic Hollywood Marvel form.
Wow. I mean, I definitely came at this film from a more political perspective, and I definitely took notice of some esoterics, but this whole idea of this hermetic inversion narratives in the film were inversions. And so, for instance, you have a lot of people praising the fact that there were female warriors, and they were based on a clan of powerful female warriors, and this was a great thing. And not to say it's not a great thing. We definitely want to give props and respect to the powerful women of our ancient cultures and the great things that they did to take care of their families and uphold their villages and so forth. But we have to pay attention to what's going on in the world and the timing of things. I just think they kind of snuck it in and sold it that way, and that's how the audience picked it up. But in fact, it was an inversion. It was an inversion to feminize the male, and and to promote this third wave feminism culture that we have right now. It's been weaponized, is my point. There's nothing wrong with being proud, or at least having respect for strong females and strong parts of history. But it's when these things are weaponized where we have to kind of look at it a little differently, you know? And I think this was a situation. And what this does is inherently it feminizes the male, because the male has to step down from his traditional position. And then a lot of people today, especially the postmodernists, they want to change tradition. I understand that. You want to change Western tradition. You think it's the patriarch and it's oppressive and all of this and that. But in turn, you want to just reverse it. You want to invert it. And that's not any better. You know, for instance, you'll find a lesbian who hates men, is a man hater, but she's forever trying to live her life as one, you know, and look like one, talk like one, act like one, yet she despises who she aims to be. That's utter confusion. That's double-mindedness on a level that is hard to even comprehend. It's a sickness.
It's coming down hard. We got to get our shit together.
Now, we always been loose. Dealing off the turf like it was never gonna run dry, that ain't no business. No other game is run so disorganized. Look around. Everything that is taking care of business is together. Dig it tight. And together. Except us. Right. And now we feeling the heat. And the action's gonna get scarce and the turf is gonna get hard. There is a way. We organize. Well, I respect your ambition, Willie, but you got to have vision. I know one thing. When it comes down on you, you either collectivize or you run like a solitary rat. Maybe. Let me lay it on you, Willie. Alone, you always gonna have to take the risk.
Don't fall for the game just because you all for the gang. I wish the woke would wake up.